First of all, I would like to express my gratitude to ORF and Mr. Sudhindra Kalkorni for inviting me here to Mumbai, and also to Padma Prakash of eSocial Sciences. It's a great pleasure to come here and meet with all these people interested in youth development and to discuss the issues of urban youth development in India and in the world. As I mentioned during the introduction round, my name is Eirik Sorlie. I work at UHabitat in Nairobi, Kenya. UHabitat is the United Nations Agency for Human Settlements for Sustainable Urban Development, and we have our headquarters in India, in Kenya, in Nairobi. I'm going to give a short presentation today on UHabitat and YouthLed Development and the programs we are implementing to support youth development across the world, including India. And I also want to show you a video with some stories of the projects we implemented in 2009. Let me just start by saying a little bit more about UHabitat and what we do. UHabitat is the lead agency for the MDG targets on water and sanitation and slum upgrading. That's MDG goal 7, target 10 and 11, reducing in half the number of people without access to safe drinking water and uplifting the lives of 100 slum dwellers. And we're also the focal point for local authorities in the UN system. We work with local governments in most, if not all, of our projects and programs. Our goals and visions you can see on the screen. It's about providing adequate shelter for all and sustainable urban development, and making sure that all people have access to sustainable urban development or are part of the development process. Furthering inclusive cities that recognize people of all colors, creed, caste, economic, social, cultural minorities. And particularly important for us is to recognize young people and also women as key players in the achievement of sustainable cities. And UHabitat has strategies to make sure that young people, and especially young women, are included in development processes. Just want to say a bit about global youth trends. In your discussion paper there's a more lengthy presentation of global youth trends, but just to, why are we talking about young people today? Why are we talking about youth-led development? Well, young people constitute a large part of the population in the world. So if you look at the age group of 15 to 24, which is the UN's official definition of young people, almost 1/5 of the world population is young. That's about 18%. And of these young people, 85% live in developing countries. And that means that the young people living in developing countries are meeting some of the biggest challenges when it comes to access to employment, access to housing, education, health services, etc. And this is a trend that's only going one way. We're seeing increased urbanization in the world, and UHabitat is forecasting that by 2030 more than half of the people in the world will live in urban areas. And in many cities across the world, up to 70% of the population is under the age of 30, and especially in cities in Africa, but also in cities in other developing countries in other continents. So if you look at this map, you'll see the global youth trends, and it's a bit dim on my screen, but if you look at this map, you'll find that the youngest populations can be found in sub-Saharan Africa, Southern Asia, and parts of Latin America. And these are also the areas where UHabitat has some of its main focuses. I think Ban Ki-moon expressed the role of young people in development quite well in his speech on International Youth Day in 2007. He said, and I'm quoting, "It is high time that we stop viewing our young people as part of the problem and started cultivating their promise and potential. Let us all resolve to invest in and protect our most valuable resource and give young men and women a fair and full stake in our society and its successes." On 12 August 2010, we launched the International Year of Youth to highlight the importance of youth development issues at international, national, and local levels. The theme of the National Youth Year is dialogue and mutual understanding, and the aim is to promote peace, solidarity, and understanding between people, and with special focus on intergenerational issues. One of the main things that we're trying to achieve through the International Year of Youth is to come up with a work plan and concrete initiatives on how young people can contribute towards reaching the Millennium Development Goals. There was a conference on the World Youth Congress being organized in Mexico last week, where the issue of Millennium Development Goals and how to reach them and how young people can contribute to reach them was one of the main topics. And the concrete output of that conference is being forwarded to the General Assembly of the UN in end of September. The International Youth Year is planned to last for 1 year from 12th August to 11th August 2011. And a number of other activities and conferences are also being planned. And what I think is quite interesting for all of you and for young people in other places in the world is the possibility for local youth initiatives to link up with International Year of Youth. So if you go to UNDESA, that's the United Nations Development of Social Affairs, and their youth department, or if you go to their Facebook sites, you'll find a lot of information on how you can link up with International Year of Youth and how your activities can be linked and how you can get ideas on launching local initiatives related to the International Year of Youth. I think it's a need to define what we mean by youth-led development, because it's kind of a new buzzword in development circles. You'll find that UN agencies are talking about it, big donors are starting to talk about it, like DFID, GTZ, UNICEF is talking about it, but there's not really a clear definition of what it is, and possibly this is also a part of our discussion later to define what is youth-led development in India, in Mumbai, and also it would be interesting for me to take your views back to Nairobi on what you think is youth-led development. We have tried to, in UHabitat, to start to arrive at some sort of definition or description of what we feel is youth-led development, and we have arrived at this definition together with young people who are involved in UHabitat's work. And this is not okay. And this is not authoritative definition or anything. But what we're saying is that youth development is about young people actively creating a better future for themselves and their communities. And it's recognizing that young people are an asset and a force for change, not a problem. It's a resource for the advancement of societies, and are initiators and take the lead in social, economical, political, and technological developments. While we say that youth development is about young people taking the lead, we're not saying that they're taking the lead in a vacuum. As the chairman was correctly saying, youth development is not about young people working alone. It's about young people and adults working in partnership. It's about young people contributing their ideas and resources, and about adults contributing their experiences and supporting young people in their development. I think I'll just skip this slide. UHabitat tries to support youth-led development worldwide in many ways. These are some of our activities and projects. The first one are the one-stop youth centers and the WAF centers. These youth centers are set up in partnerships with local governments, with city councils, and they are an attempt to create centers where young people can get information on education, on job opportunities, on governance. Because what we found when during our research and when meeting youth organizations in many countries is that this is one of the main needs that young people have. They have no access to information, they don't know how to influence, they don't know what opportunities they have or what rights they have according to the policies of the government. The second is a concrete regional training center we have in Nairobi, which is providing vocational training for youth through experiential learning. So we're taking young people out of the slums who have no formal education and training them in construction skills, through experiential learning. There's no classrooms, there's no textbooks, everything is done through experiential learning, and they're learning low-cost construction techniques that they can actually employ later, and that they can start their own small businesses and construct their own structures. Another important part of our work is research, and Padma mentioned shortly the State of the Urban Youth Report, of which you have a summary in your files, and I believe also some copies of the report is available at this meeting. Because very little research is available on youth and urban youth internationally and their role in development. And we're trying, with this publication, which is a biannual publication, to provide data and research on the situation of young people in the world cities. The last two topics I'll come back to in a moment. It's the Global Youth Help Desk that we're setting up with ESS and the UHabitat Urban Youth Fund. I'm just stealing somebody's cell phone so I can keep an eye on the time and not go too much over my time. The UHabitat Urban Youth Fund is one of our most important programs in supporting youth-led development. It was established by a governing council resolution in 2007. It means that member countries of the UHabitat have requested to set up this fund. It was only launched in November 2008, and the first round of grants were announced on 5th October 2009. So it's a fairly new program, and we haven't even finished the first round of projects. There's still midterm review. The fund is supported by the government of Norway with $1 million per annum, so it's quite a small fund in a global sense, and it covers Africa, Latin America, and Asia. The aims of the fund is to support urban youth in developing countries with the aim of advancing the achievement of the Millennium Development Goals and the Habitat Agenda. That's the first part, to support concrete projects with concrete impacts that help disadvantaged youth in slums across the developing world. And the second part is to undertake research on best practices in youth-led development, to create greater awareness among donors, policymakers of the need to mainstream youth in development issues. So we're using the research on the projects we are carrying out to come up with models of how governments and other donors can support youth-led development, and what are the best practices in youth-led development. The fund gives small grants of up to $25,000 and supports projects related to youth employment, youth participation in governance, access to secure tenure and shelter, water and sanitation, gender mainstreaming, and establishment of youth networks that work on sustainable urbanization. Just a short information on how the fund functions. We have a general call for applications, which will be 15 January next year. We have a deadline for applications 15 April, and then we announce the beneficiaries on 12 August every year. We try to also build some capacity in our beneficiaries of the fund, because one thing we experience is that many of the youth groups and youth-led groups that we support, obviously they're applying for funds to start projects, but just as much they're also looking for advice, looking for empowerment, and looking for a network with other organizations and practitioners who are doing similar things to learn from each other. So we also try to provide that component to the beneficiaries of our fund, not only to give them the money and leave them alone, but to help build their capacity, help support their projects, and help build a network of youth-led organizations and projects across the world that can exchange information and learn from each other. In 2010, we received about 1,560 applications from 85 countries in Asia, Africa, and Latin America.